We continue with the broadcast this morning, and it's time of the week where we bring you Crime Talk with eThekwini Secure. We're going straight now to join Imtiaz Syed, Chairperson of eThekwini Secure. Imtiaz, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing this morning?
Alhamdulillah, doing very well. Now, Imtiaz, we are looking at the month of August. August is Women's Month. And
Absolutely.
last night we had quite an extensive discussion on the challenges that are facing women. Now, one aspect that came out very, very strongly is women suffering the impact of some of the social ills that we are faced with in society. And we know, for instance, drug abuse is one. And looking at the correlation between drug abuse and gender based violence, I think this is absolutely important because we find in many instances in a home situation where a wife, a mother, a daughter, somebody at the end of the day is suffering. And so there is the strong link between gender based violence and drug abuse.
No, absolutely. I think since the advent of us legalizing marijuana in the country, we find that we as society have started normalizing the issue around it, and we find more and more of our youth are starting to indulge, and we as parents are saying, it's okay because it's legal in the country. So, with that being said, what are we in fact doing and how are we moving towards it? We find more and more of our girls as well starting to indulge in these sorts of things. And as you always knew from the time I was young, in fact, where we would speak to that particular drug being a gateway drug to other things. Now, in a state of intoxication, what happens and how do things unfold and how do we end up in the situations of rape and gender-based violence per se? So what is the correlation between the two and how as we as society have normalized it is really something to speak about in its true form.
Yes, and Imtiaz, I'm sure you know at eThekwini Secure there have been a number of cases where you and your organization have been exposed to, and I'm sure some of these stories actually coming out are actually horrific.
Inayat, we tend to as society and as parents and as families, because of the negative impact in terms of society around drug related issues, we tend to want to conceal it as families and yes, understandably so, because ultimately the impact and the stigma that comes with drug abuse and drug use or family abuse or things like that ultimately lives with the person forever. And we can understand that in terms of the trauma and the mental capacity of the person and how they deal with it. It takes people into states of depression and all of those things. We get that, right? However, when did we not do something that spoke to these issues? We don't identify them at their infancy stage, and we allow our kids at 15 years, 16 years old. No, it's okay. They need to try something. They need to do it, and it's okay. It's normal in society. And the only time we start speaking out about it is when it starts manifesting itself as a burden on us as families. And this is something we need to rectify. Yes, we can't fix all of the problems in society at once, but you can only eat an elephant in small pieces. Now, based on that argument, we are saying that yes, you can't eradicate the drug issue across the entire country, but we as parents at home need to start identifying. If our kids are starting to smoke even cigarettes, we need to start being very strict on these things. We need to start saying it's not okay for you to smoke marijuana. It's not okay for you to go out late at night and come home without me inspecting you when you come home for soberness and intoxicity and all of these things. So we are not doing what we should be doing. And eventually, when the problem goes out of hand, we then as parents and as uncles and as aunts want to step in with we know everything about it. And I was dealing with an issue the other day wherein yes, we found the child to be in business with family and whatever, and then we found that okay, he's on cocaine and all of that, right? However, the issue comes in as soon as you find out your child's on cocaine, you want to start putting in measures. No, we're not going to give you money. We're not going to let you go out. You need to tell us when you're coming home. But here we're speaking to an adult. What do we do to that person's self-esteem by putting in these stringent measures at a very late stage in their life? We tend to take them and put them in a prison wherein they're saying, no, I can't tolerate this anymore. So there's no medium space, there's no intermediate space for us to discuss these issues and actually bring out some sort of plan to say that this is how we deal with this. because of the stigma it now attaches, because nobody must know there's a case that happened and he's being charged. That's going to affect them from going overseas. And all of these different things come to the fore when, in fact, we did not identify the problems with our children in its infancy stage. And that's between the ages of 13 to 18 years old is the very, very crucial time for our kids where they start learning about these things, identification about these things. And there's something that I had done with my kids a very long time ago. When my sons turned 13, I took them to some of my friends and I introduced them to drugs, physically introduced them, not saying that they should take it, but this is what these different drugs are. This is what they do. This is what they look like. So when they go to school and there's a kid that comes in with, for example, an ecstasy, he says, "No, I already know about this. I've seen a video about it." So it's about us educating them about drugs instead of us putting up a shield against them and saying, "No, you shouldn't know at all. It's taboo. You must not know about it." We should introduce them to it. We should make them know about the effects, and we should show them the short-term as well as the long-term effects of drugs. For example, I've taken my daughter out to meet some homeless people, and they tell their stories of drug abuse and how they ended up in this situations. These are people that have educated backgrounds, but because of the problem they have, and eventually when families tend to say, "You know what, we're done and we cannot do anything more," they end up on the street. And these are the stories that are to be told, and we need to start bringing that to the fore. So our children become fearful of these drugs instead of them telling themselves that they can deal with it and can handle it.
Yes, Imtiaz. And also, I think when one looks at, you mentioned identifying the problem at a young age or even talking to them at a young age before the
Yes.
problem arises, is also the capacity or the lack of capacity to deal with the problem.
Yes. No, you see, the thing is, when we try to deal with it internally and we're not seeking advice on the matter, then we tend to do things where we believe we are doing the right thing. But in actual fact, we might be going against what could be assisting this person that now has the problem. Now, let us speak to how does it correlate into gender-based violence. So, for example, if there's an individual that's married and he's now abusing drugs, whether it's cocaine or rock cocaine or whatever it is, right? Eventually, that becomes a family issue where the mother-in-law and the father-in-law and everybody wants to now protect the integrity of the family as a unit, and they don't want to expose these things. So women tend to live in these sorts of marriages for a very, very long period, being abused day in and day out, simply for money, simply for things, and simply because there's a particular individual in that family that's now causing a stir.
Well, Imtiaz, this is something I think we need to talk about more, possibly looking at next week again. When we talk about, I think we've just basically scratched the surface, and I think there's a lot more that you and I can
Absolutely
talk
right.
about. So, inshallah, next week we will definitely continue and pursue this discussion. But for now, unfortunately, we're out of time. We'll look forward to next week once again. Jazakallah, as always, for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Imtiaz Syed, the chairperson of eThekwini Secure. We're going to head for the news. Zahid Jedward is on standby.